Chapter 143. Can't you see? I am using my own life to bet on a future. In the fire, Shun Miao's eyes were even brighter than the burning flames, but the determination in them was like a rock and could not be shaken. What is the use of a future if one is dead? Xiejing Xing said in a stern voice, "It is too risky." Xin Miao laughed and looked at him as she said sarcastically, "I am different from Little Marquis. Little Marquis's hands and eyes are all over the heavens, and one would not need to spend much effort to obtain anything. I am different. If I do not fight with my life, the outcome would be worse than death. I am not even afraid of death, so why would I be afraid of fire?" She paused. "You can leave." Xiejing Xing frowned as he looked at her, and a look of deep thought flashed in his pair of beautiful peach blossom eyes. He was not a good person and did not want to put on a show of helping. Just now it was an accident, and now that he had recovered to his senses, he was somewhat laughing at himself for not being able to keep his composure. Thinking about this, Xiejing Xing hugged his chest and leapt onto the beam that was not on fire and said with interest, "I forgot that you are an intelligent person of the Shen family and of course have the ability to escape unscathed. But this Marquis also want to see what kind of ability do you have." His purple robe actually showed some flowing gold in the firelight, and what was even more dazzling than his robe was the smile at the corner of his lips. The youth's expression was arrogant, and his features were as beautiful as a painting. When he looked at him like this, he looked like the passionate young master in the opera. However, his eyes revealed a coldness and cruelty, causing his frivolous appearance to become a bit colder. At the banquet in the eastern courtyard, after hearing that Shen Xian and wife had returned to the residence, Ren Wanyun panicked. Her heart still held onto a trace of hope and thought that it must be some mischievous servant who said that. But before she could think of any good ideas, she saw the servants outside leading a group of travel-worn people in. The leader laughed loudly from afar. "Mother, this son has returned to the capital to congratulate you on your birthday. Mother, please forgive me for coming late." Everyone's eyes looked towards that group of people. The bearded man and shrewish beautiful woman at the front were Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan, and the youth with a warm smile behind them was Shen Qiu. If it was in the past, there would be cheers and laughter at this moment. With Ren Wanyun's ability to socialize, she would be able to coax Shen Xian and wife to be happy. But today's matter happened suddenly, and it did not happen earlier or later, but it happened when Shen Xian returned to the residence. Xin Miao was still trapped in the ancestral hall, and Ren Wanyun did not know what to do for a moment and could only stand there foolishly. Old Shen Foreign was even more so. She did not have any ideas and only knew how to put on airs in the inner courtyard. Even when dealing with Shen Miao, she would use some underhanded methods. In front of so many people, she couldn't even pretend to be flustered. Chun Rochio's heart was somewhat anxious. Even though she also wanted the second household and first household to suffer together, but now she was also at this banquet. If Shen Xian did not return today and Shen Miao died in the fire, then it would be fine as there was no evidence and they could say whatever they want. But if Shen Xian returned, he would have eyes and anyone with discerning eyes would be able to see what was going on. What should she do? Xinqing and Shen Yu were somewhat afraid of this eldest brother-in-law of theirs. Because Shen Xian was after all a military general, he would always have a murderous and sharp aura. These delicate young ladies, would always feel fearful for no reason, and when they saw their mother's fearful look, they were even more at a loss. Xin Gui and Shan Wan looked at each other, and both of their eyes were very dignified. For so many years, they had concealed it well so there were no mistakes and had never seen this eldest brother of theirs getting angry. But if something really happened to Shen Miao today, what would Shen Xian do? Just thinking about it made them shudder. Chapter 144. While she was pondering, Shen Xian and wife and Shen Qiu had already walked to the front of old Shen Foreign's banquet. Seeing that the guests did not make a sound and only stared at them with a strange expression, Luo Shuiyan frowned and sensitively felt that something was wrong, but she did not know what was wrong. It was still Shen Qiu who looked at the table and then seriously and carefully looked around before asking in puzzlement, Zumu, why do I not see younger sister at this table? With that said, Shen Xian and Luo Shuiyan also noticed. Shen Yu and Shen Qing were there, and even the Shu daughter of the first household, Shen Dongling, was also there, but among the few young ladies, Shun Miao's figure was not seen. Shin Xian's smile paused before he asked, "Mother, where did Jiao Jiao go?" Old Shin Foren was at a loss for words. How could she say? Ren Wanyuan kept saying to call for the guards, but her actions were slow, and it was obvious that she did not put the matter in her heart. They were even sitting on this seat and did not move. Great General Shun. It was Feng Ning who suddenly stood up and said loudly, "You came back at the right time. Just now the ancestral hall caught fire and 5th Shun young lady is currently trapped in the fire." Her words deliberately made one feel indignant, but in fact it was to help Shun Miao vent her anger. Feng Ning was favored in the Feng family, and not to mention the situation today. Even if she fell in the residence, everyone would come and show concern for her well-being. Now seeing that Shun Miao was in danger, but everyone in the Shun residence did not panic, her heart sympathized with Shun Miao. Since Shun Xian came back at such a coincidental time, one would not complain to Shin Xian. When the words were said, Shin Xian and Luo Shuiyan were surprised for a moment. The ancestral hall caught fire and Shun Miao was trapped in the fire. Everything was fine, so why would Shun Miao go to the ancestral hall? More importantly, why was it that when Shun Miao was in danger, these Shun family's relatives could still drink and have fun at the banquet? Ren Wanyuan recovered to her senses and quickly explained, "Eldest brother and eldest Saw, I was just about to go look for the guards and you all just came." She had not finished speaking when Shin Xian brushed past her without a word and glanced at Ren Wanyuan, which made her feel as if she had fallen into an ice cellar. It was too scary and too vicious. Luo Shuiyan and Shan Xiu also regained their senses and rushed towards the ancestral hall without saying a word. In the ancestral hall, the fire was getting fiercer and fiercer, almost turning into a huge fireball. In it, Shun Miao used a wet handkerchief that she had prepared in advance to cover her mouth and nose, but Xie Jingxing frowned as he looked at her. Even in the suffocating smoke, he looked very relaxed and did not have a trace of embarrassment. He said to Shun Miao, "If you do not go out, you will really die here. If you don't go out now, you can only be buried with me." Shun Miao retorted, "Eloquent." Xie Jingxing smiled without a care. "What are you waiting for?" Before he could finish, he heard an angry roar from outside, "Jiao Jiao." Xie Jingxing suddenly rushed to the side of the window, and through the small empty space in the middle of the flames, he could see clearly that the people outside were not others but Shan Xian, wife, and Shin Xiu. Shin Xian and Luo Shuiyan previously thought that the water was on fire, but did not think that the fire would be so fierce, and instantly their eyes were about to crack. There was a group of guards outside the ancestral hall, but no one went in to save, and only found some buckets to splash water to put out the fire. However, this was like trying to put out a burning cart of firewood with a cup of water. If they were to rush in, how would Shin Miao still have her life? Shin Xiu gritted his teeth. "I will go and save younger sister." Finishing, he wanted to rush in, but before he could even take 2 steps, the scale outside fell in front of him with a pa sound and the burning fire made crackling sounds, blocking the way forward. "Jiao Jiao, younger sister." In the room, Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows and said, "So your little name is Jiao Jiao, but it does not match the person at all." Chapter 145. The person that I am waiting for has arrived. Little Marquis should think of a way to get out yourself. Shin Miao's eyes were filled with killing intent. Now that she had arranged this show herself, it was to let Shin Xian see clearly what kind of situation was this harmonious and friendly Shin residence, and what kind of evil intentions were hidden in those relatives who kept saying that they doted on her. Military generals were loyal, and they were not fools. They were just not willing to use the most vicious thoughts to guess a person's heart, and she did not have much time to let Shin Xian slowly understand. Thus, she could only use the most direct and violent means to let them see clearly. She picked up a piece of wood that was on fire from the ground and fiercely touched it on her arm. Xie Jingxing was startled for a moment. Shin Miao gritted her teeth and large drops of sweat flowed down her forehead. She threw away that piece of wood, and on her fair arm, there was a burn mark. Xie Jingxing could not hide the shock in his heart. It was not that he had never met females who were ruthless to him in his entire life. Those females among the death warriors would also treat him like this without hesitation. But Shun Miao was not a death warrior. She was just a delicate young lady in a noble family. Her life should be the same as those noble young ladies in the Ding capital, just like her name, delicate and soft, and not something that would burn his body without a frown. He saw Shen Miao put some flames on her body before straightening her body and running outside. She stumbled as she ran, as if she was about to fall, but her movements were extremely precise, and there were no flames in the places that she ran past. Xie Jingxing narrowed his eyes and saw clearly that the path was narrow, and there was a small opening in the burning ancestral hall. It seemed that someone had long prepared it and poured something that would not catch fire on it, so that she could successfully escape from it. Everything was arranged by Shen Miao. She really used her own life to gamble for a future, and she won the gamble, so the unlucky ones would be the others. Xie Jingxing's lips curled into a smile. He took a meaningful glance at the back of the figure that had disappeared into the flames. Then, he rushed to another exit, which was the back door of the ancestral hall. His body was as light as a swallow. With a punch and a kick, this incomparably dangerous fiery cage and him were like flat ground. In the blink of an eye, he had rushed out. The people on the other side were already there. When they saw him coming out, they all heaved a sigh of relief.
Master,
the thing isn't in the ancestral hall. Shenxian is back. Let's go, he said quickly and disappeared into the woods behind the ancestral hall. Outside, Shen Miao stumbled out. Seeing Shan Miao's figure, Shen Xiu jumped up, younger sister. Shenxian and Luo Shuiyan almost cried tears of joy. They had tried to brave the fire and rush in, but who knew that they could not get in? Now that they saw Shen Miao running out by herself, they were overjoyed. Jiao Jiao. When Shen Miao ran out, her legs softened and she fainted. Shen Xiu quickly caught her and saw that there was a shocking burn mark on Shen Miao's left arm. Shen Xiu's eyes suddenly turned red and Shen Miao shrank in his embrace as she muttered with her eyes closed, "Let me out, I will not marry." When Shenxian and Luo Shuiyan, who had rushed over, heard this, they were immediately stunned on the spot. In the western courtyard, there was a thick fragrance of medicine in the air. The servants inside and outside seemed to be busy, and in this seemingly deserted courtyard, there seemed to be an upgrade. And at this moment, the room was bustling. I handed Jiao Jiao over to both younger sisters, thinking that younger sisters would definitely help me look after Jiao Jiao, but now it seems that it is not so. If I did not come back at the right time, one fear that Jiao Jiao would have died in this fire without anyone knowing. Luo Shuiyan hugged her chest and sneered. Naturally, she was not a person that was easy to get along with, and on the battlefield, she had the nickname of Rakshas's Woman. Usually she was polite to the people of the Shun residence, but that was only on account of their upbringing of Shen Miao, who knew that today, it was as if the mask of the past had been torn off, and her heart was extremely angry, so her words were naturally merciless. Chapter 146. Sister-in-law, it's not like that. Ren Wanyun explained with an apologetic smile. Just now I had already asked the guards to extinguish the fire. I see Jiao Jiao as my own daughter, so how can I watch her fall into danger? Sister-in-law, you know very well how I've treated Jiao Jiao all these years. Otherwise, why would Jiao Jiao be so close to us? She was also anxious in her heart. Luo Shuiyan had never blushed with anyone before, probably because she did not understand the affairs of the inner courtyard women. In the past, she was easy to coax, but when she really did not let it go, her imposing manner was also very shocking. Biological daughter? Luo Shuiyan sneered. Our Jiao Jiao cannot afford to be such a vicious mother like you. She faced Ren Wanyun and forced Ren Wanyun to retreat step by step, but her tone was cold. I also want to ask younger sister. Since it is old Tai Tai's birthday, why is Jiao Jiao alone in the ancestral hall? Fifth lady wants to go to the ancestral hall to burn incense for old ancestor. Under Luo Shuiyan's intense gaze, Ren Wanyun panicked and found a clumsy excuse. Ren Wanyun, Luo Shuiyan sternly shouted. You are using these excuses to deceive me. Do you think I am a fool? What locking her in the ancestral hall? What forcing her to marry him? I'll settle this debt one by one. I won't let this matter go so easily. Ren Wanyun, Luo Shuiyan was originally shrewish, and when she started to compete, there was a kind of overbearing majesty. As long as my Jiao Jiao is not good, you see how I will settle the accounts with you. She finished speaking in one breath, causing everyone in the room to tremble in fear. Luo Shuiyin was not in the Shun residence all year round, and the servants in the room did not treat her as a proper master. And there were even more people who were Ren Wanyun's eyes. Every time Luo Shuiyin came back, she was always smiling. She was open-minded and straightforward. She didn't haggle over small things. Everyone thought that she was easy to talk to. They had never seen her so stern. It made Ren Wanyun unable to spit out a single word, and her face turned purple. Shun Miao, who was sleeping in the inner room, turned over, but her pair of eyes were very clear. She racked her brains to act this out and did not even hesitate to leave scars on her body, just to eliminate any possibility of Ren Wanyun being forgiven. The Shin family were all experts in acting. If they put on a few plays and said some good words, one was afraid that it would make people soft-hearted. Unless the harm had already been done, no parent would tolerate others hurting their children, just like her Wanyu and Fu Ming. Now Luo Shuiyin did not trust Ren Wanyun and Qinruoqiu like in the past, and treated the second and third households people with the attitude of an enemy. At least her burns were not in vain. That was good. And in the outer courtyard, Shen Xian and Shun Xiu were currently facing Shang Gui and Shun Wan. Big brother. This is all a misunderstanding. Shin Gui was somewhat badly battered. He did not know that Ren Wanyun wanted to change the marriage of Shin Miao and Shen Qing sisters, and the reason why Shin Miao was locked up in the ancestral hall was because Shun Miao had committed a mistake previously. Shin Gui had been brooding over the matter of Shun Miao, contradicting him in Rong Jingtang that day, and naturally did not have any opinion on bringing Shen Miao into the ancestral hall, but who knew that something would happen at this critical juncture. Second Shu, this is not considered as a misunderstanding. Shin Xiu took a step forward and clenched his fists tightly, trying his best to control his impulse to go forward and overturn the two of them. During Zumu's birthday banquet, only my younger sister was locked up in the ancestral hall. I want to ask, what mistake did she commit, and why are there so many guards at the door? These guards did not go to save her, and just watch from the outside. Second Shu, third Shu, can I understand that these guards did not go to save her, but to block the path of others, and think of ways to take my younger sister's life? Shin Xiu was after all young and impetuous, so naturally he would not think before speaking, and said whatever he thought of. He did not disappoint Shan Miao's expectations, and the words he said were even more serious than what Shin Miao had thought. When the words were said, Shen Xian's face darkened and Shun Gui and Shun Wan jumped in shock. Shun Wan quickly persuaded, eldest nephew, how can you say it like that? Fifth mother is our niece. Why would we harm her? He looked at Shen Xian. Big brother, today's matter was an accident. Big brother has lived with us for so many years. If we wanted to harm fifth mother, how would we raise her up to this age? Does big brother not believe us? Chapter 147. Shin Wan was a scholar, and when he put on a bright and clear appearance, he was able to deceive people's hearts, as if he was the only upright and plain-spoken person in the world. But Shen Xian did not fall for this. If it was in the past, he would most likely think that this was a misunderstanding. After all, they had raised Shun Miao so well for so many years, and even Shun Miao was willing to be close to them. But after today's matter, when he looked at these people again, he only felt that under the surface of a scholarly person, there was a wolf's ambition. Thus, under Shun Gui and Shun Wan's shocked gaze, Shen Xian scolded, "Your mother's fart. Do you think that this father is easy to deceive? I handed Jiao Jiao over to you, but you want to harm her. Lock her up in the ancestral hall and force her to marry? Shin Gui, Shun Wan, do not think that this father is not in the capital, that this father's daughter can be bullied by you. Today I, Shen Xian, will leave my words here. Wait till Jiao Jiao wakes up, then we shall see." Shin Gui and Shun Wan were dumbstruck. Even though Shen Xian was a rough military general, but for so many years, he had always restrained his rough temperament in front of them. Even though he was not as elegant as those scholars, but with one look, one knew that this Shen Xian was a hooligan in his bones. These words made Shin Gui and Shun Wan not know how to continue. In fact, Shen Xian was also angered to the extreme. Originally, when he saw his own daughter in a sea of fire, his heart was angry and in pain. But the words that Shan Miao said before she fainted became the last straw that broke the camel's back. The simpler she said it, the more it made one's imagination run wild, and even made Shen Exine guess what kind of days Shen Miao was living in the Shen residence. The more he thought, the more disgusted he looked at his two younger brothers. If it was possible, Shen Exine wished he could pull out his sword and slash these two beasts. "Shut up!" An angry shout was heard from behind. Everyone turned around and saw Fuer and Shier supporting old Shen Foren as they walked over. Old Shen Foren almost had a heart attack from anger. She cared about Face the most in her life, but today on her birthday banquet, she made a fool of herself in front of all the reputable people in the Ding capital. The guests had personally seen Shen Exine and Luo Shuiyan's denouncing look and knew that one could not stay for long, so they hurriedly left. Only the banquet that was halfway through was left. Now that all the guests had left, she hurried over wanting to question them, but who knew that she would see the scene of Shen Exine questioning Shen Gui and Shen Wan, and naturally did not hesitate to speak out. Shen Xiao turned his head back and saw old Shen Foren. He greeted her as Zhu Mu, but his attitude was not warm. In the past when Shen Yuan was around, old Shen Foren favored Shen Yuan a little, and everyone said that it was because old Foren did not like to fight and kill, and Shen Yuan walked the path of a civil official, thus old Foren favored Shen Yuan. But most children would have an intuition that Shen Xiao instinctively did not like to be close to old Shen Foren, and later on when he came back less, he became even more distant. This time he had personally witnessed Shan Miao falling into a trap, and the banquet was still able to continue. Shen Xiao's heart did not feel good, and he could not wait to stand up for his younger sister. Old Shen Foren glanced at Shen Xiao before her eyes swept across Shen Exine and finally put on airs. "Eldest Shen, you just returned to the residence, and what kind of prestige are you showing to your two younger brothers? Why, do you want to put on the airs of a general in my Shen family?" When old Shen Foren was young, even though she was a songstress and had unfilial means in the dark, she was still very gentle and virtuous on the surface and made the old general obedient. Before the old general died, he told Shen Exine that Shen Gui and Shan Wan walked the path of a civil official, and only Shen Exine inherited the mantle, and to support his two younger brothers, one must make the family harmonious. When old General Shen was still alive, he had a deep father-son relationship with Shen Exine, and Shen Exine would always remember his words. So in these years, his respect towards old Shen Foren did not change at all. Chapter 148. But in the past, people's feelings were always directed downwards. Parents loved their children and children loved the next generation of children, but there were very few who loved their parents more than their children. Shen Exine was the same. Between a mother who was not related by blood and his own flesh and blood, Shen Exine naturally would not hesitate to choose his flesh and blood. Old Shen Foren's words did not have any use in Shen Exine's ears. He cupped his fists towards old Shen Foren. "Mother, it is not that I am putting on airs in the residence, but today's matter is really fishy. I am the formidable great general, and if I cannot even protect my own daughter's safety, how would I have the face to see the Shen family's ancestors? Would it not be a shame to my prestige outside? I will definitely get to the bottom of this matter. Today should be celebrating Mother's birthday, but this son is unfilial and is unable to watch Jiao Jiao fall into a predicament as if nothing had happened. So one can only apologize to Mother in the future." His words were full of hidden sarcasm. Shen Miao was in a predicament, but these Shen family people still had the mood to continue the banquet as if nothing had happened. Old Shen Foren stood blankly at the same spot. Shen Exine had always been well-behaved towards her. When she was young, she had thought of using other means to kill Shen Exine, but the old general doted on Shen Exine like his lifeblood and did not give her any chance to do so. When Shen Exine grew up, there was no other way. But Shen Exine treated her with respect, and she was happy to put on a show. This was the first time Shen Exine refuted her words in such a strong manner, and she was so shocked that she did not make a sound. Shen Exine then turned his head to look at Shen Gui and Shen Wan and said in a gloomy tone, "I will naturally investigate clearly what is going on in this matter. Second younger brother and third younger brother, farewell." He turned and strode away, not even looking at the rest of them. Shen Xiao quickly followed. After walking out of the eastern courtyard, Shen Exine then said to Shen Xiao, Later give the fire rat fur cloak to your younger sister. I see that the danger in the residence is not comparable to the battlefield, and your younger sister needs it more than old tie-dye. Yes. Shinshio was overjoyed and immediately thought of something, father. Before younger sister fainted, we have to check on what marriage matters. The Northwest has never received any news about these things. Humph, Shin Exian said in a deep voice. I see that there are quite a number of demons and ghosts in the general residence. This time your younger sister almost lost her life. Find those who do not want their lives, and let this old man serve them with great torture. Residents of the Marquis of Lineage. When Xie Jingxing returned to the room, he saw a person sitting in front of the table. That person's white robes fluttered as he gently fanned himself and smiled at him. What are you here for? Xie Jingxing put down the sword in his hand and asked, I heard that you went to the Shen residence to look for something. What was the result? Gao Yang asked with a smile. No. I have long guessed that the thing is not in the Shun residence. Gao Yang shook his head and a trace of disappointment flashed across his face. If the thing is not in the Shen residence, what are you going to do next? 8 immortals crossing the sea, each showing their supernatural powers. Xie Jingxing sat opposite him and poured himself a cup of tea. What else can it be? But with Shun Exian's return to the capital this time, there might be new turbulence in Mingqi. Gao Yang looked at him, and the fan in his hand slightly paused. At this time, will the Fu family? He placed his hand on his neck and made a gesture of silencing someone. The Shen family's merits are too high to cover the lords, adding oil to the fire. Sooner or later there will be such a day. Xie Jingxing drank a mouthful of tea and evaluated in a flat tone, without a trace of sympathy. Gao Yang shrugged his shoulders and suddenly thought of something. He took out a small green bottle from his bosom. Last time I heard from Tai Yi that your hand was injured, so I prescribed this medicine for you. What medicine do I need for a small injury? Xie Jingxing frowned. This medicine of mine will not leave a scar. Gao Yang forcefully stuffed the medicine bottle into Xie Jingxing's hands. It is not good to leave a scar. I am not a woman. Xie Jingxing threw the medicine bottle back like he was avoiding the plague. Take it back. If you were a woman, you would cry and beg me for it. Gao Yang said, take it back. This medicine is very expensive. 1 bottle is worth 1,000 gold. Xie Jingxing swept a glance at him, and his lips curled up in disdain. But suddenly he thought of the sea of fire and the scene of the young female burning the tablet on her hand without hesitation. Afraid of leaving a scar? That might not be the case. After muttering to himself for a moment, he reached out and kept the medicine bottle back into his bosom. Chapter 149. Following Shin Exian's victorious return to the court, there was a huge uproar in the Ding capital. The first to bear the brunt was naturally praising Shin Exian's bravery and martial prowess as he was victorious in hundreds of battles. This time he had taken the enemy's surrender letter, and when the banquet was held, the emperor would definitely bestow numerous rewards. But now that Shin Exian was already a first-rank official, he really could not be promoted anymore. Everyone guessed that this reward would most likely fall onto Shin Exian's D-son, Shinshio. The other matter was that on the day Shin Exian returned to the capital, it coincided with old Shunforan's birthday, but unfortunately the ancestral hall caught fire, and unfortunately 5th Shin young lady was still trapped in the ancestral hall. That day everyone in the Shin family had a cold attitude, and Shin Exian had personally witnessed it. One feared that the Shin family would not be peaceful in the future. These two matters were spread in an uproar in the Ding capital. Some people only laughed when they heard it, but when others heard it, they were like ants on a hot pan, anxiously pacing around in circles. In the western courtyard of the Shun residence, in the boudoir, Shun Miao stood up with her clothes draped over her shoulders. Shun Exian and wife were summoned to the palace by the emperor, but before they left, they specially mobilized the guards from the army to guard the western courtyard. It was as if it was clearly shown to the Shin family that they were guarding against the Shin family. Yesterday, Shin Exian returned in a hurry and went around to look for a physician. Afterwards, when Shen Miao rested, he did not dare to disturb her. He did not even speak to Shen Miao. Does young lady feel better? Jingzhe said worriedly. Her gaze landed on the cloth wrapped around Shun Miao's arm, and her eyes turned sour. She said, "If this servant was faster yesterday, young lady would not need to suffer such torment. Now there is even a scar. That burn mark was too deep, and the physician said that one could only take good care of it, as it was impossible to not have a scar at all. Females all cherish their own appearance, and it was not acceptable even if there was a little scar on the body." Now that Shen Miao was scalded, Jingzhe would blame herself every time she thought about it. "Nothing." Shen Miao looked at her and said with a smile, "You did very well yesterday. You did not rush in because you were anxious. If you had rushed in, it would have spoiled my matters." Jingzhe lowered her head. Afterwards, when Shen Miao fainted and Shen Xian and wife were furious, she thought about it and roughly understood what Shen Miao was thinking. It was because of this that Jingzhe's heart ached for Shen Miao even more. Most likely it was because she was at the end of the road that she did not hesitate to put herself in such a dangerous situation, to let Shen Xian and wife see the true face of the Shen family. An unmarried young female, at this age, should be playing the zither and writing like the young ladies of other families, but Shen Miao's every move was related to her own life. Whatever he wanted, he had to plan it himself. It was as if he was walking on the edge of a blade, and a moment of carelessness would lead to eternal damnation. "This servant will do whatever young lady says," Jingzhe muttered. Shen Miao's heart was gratified. Jingzhe was indeed the most daring among the four maids. In the future, if there were such matters, Jingzhe could be of use. Naturally, it was necessary to slowly train Gu Yu and the rest. She was not an unmarried daughter, Shen Miao, but the ruler of the 6 palaces, Empress Shen. She must have her own confidence, and what she would face in the future would be much more dangerous than what was in front of her. If she could get used to it, then these maids must also learn to get used to it. Just as he was thinking, he heard a hearty laughter coming from outside. "Little sister." Shen Miao turned her head back and saw Shun Xiu walking in from the door. He had taken off the armor he wore on the battlefield and was only wearing a green robe, making him look exceptionally heroic. Wheat-colored skin and 2 dimples when he smiled made his valiant brows look a little childish. He walked closer and looked at Shen Miao before carefully asking, "Does younger sister feel uncomfortable anywhere?" Shen Miao suddenly closed her eyes, and the memories of her previous lifetime came flooding in. In all fairness, Shen Xiu, as an older brother, did his best. In the beginning, no matter how cold she was to Shen Xiu would always treat her warmly. Afterwards, there was a matter where Shen Xiu tainted the innocence of another young lady and was forced to marry that young lady. Thus everything changed. Mistakes were often made in military matters, and later he fell from a horse and broke his leg. Afterwards, that young lady gave Shen Xiu a green hat, and Shen Xiu killed the adulterer in a rage, who knew that it was the only son of the Minister of Personnel. The Minister of Personnel wrote an imperial report, and Shen Xian used up all of his family's wealth to save Shen Xiu's life. But Shen Xiu still died in a winter morning, and someone found his corpse in a pond. Chapter 150. At that time, Shen Miao was already married to Fu Xiuyi, and it was the crucial time for the fight for the throne. When she heard the grievous news, she rushed back to the residence and saw Shen Xiu's deformed and swollen body. Even if she was not close to Shen Xiu, but after all they had the same blood flowing in them. She was in pain because of this and fell seriously ill, but Fu Xiuyi let Shen Xian go out to battle at that time. That cold winter sun, the wet body outside the pond, Shen Xiu's deformed and pale face, and the youth's fawning smile in front of her, was like a sharp sword that pierced her until she could not breathe. Shen Miao suddenly bent down and clutched her chest as she gasped for air. "Younger sister." Shen Xiu jumped in shock and helped her up before shouting outside, "Go and call a physician. Quickly. Younger sister's body is not well." A hand grabbed Shen Xiu's arm, and he turned his head back to see Shen Miao grabbing his hand as she stood up and said, "No need. It is just that I am a little weak. Younger sister's body is still not well. It is better to call a physician over to take a look." Shen Xiu shook his head and his tone was filled with concern. "I am fine." Shen Miao said to the hesitating Jingzhe, "All of you can withdraw." Her tone was firm and calm, which made Shen Xiu stunned for a moment. "Younger sister, what happened to you?" Shen Xiu asked. When the words came out, he was somewhat vexed that his words were too heavy. He usually faced those iron-blooded men in the army and had forgotten to be gentle towards young ladies. Thus he slowed down his voice and said, "Father and mother were frightened when they saw you trapped in the fire yesterday. Younger sister, why are you in the ancestral hall? Are you locked up?" Xin Miao, however, shook her head and looked at him with a smile. 1 year of not seeing, is eldest brother well? Ah. Shinshio was a simple-minded person and scratched his head when he heard that. I am still all right. The army is like that, and have made a few small contributions. Wait for His Majesty to bestow the rewards, then younger sister can pick what you like. After saying that, he seemed to have thought of something and happily said, "Oh right, father had hunted a fire rat and skinned it to make a cloak. Later, I will get the servants to bring it over for you. That cloak is impervious to swords and spears, water and fire. If you had that cloak, you wouldn't have been burned yesterday." Before the words were finished, Shunshio froze. Xin Miao went forward and wrapped her hands around Shunshio's arms and rested her head on his chest. Even if they were biological siblings, they were not children after all. Shunshio felt a little awkward for a moment, but also a little happy. Xin Miao had not been this close to him for a long time, and was somewhat overwhelmed by the favor. Just as he was somewhat happy, his heart sank. Thinking of Xin Miao's temperament, for her to be so close to him for the first time today, could it be that she had suffered a huge grievance? He hurriedly asked, "Sister, did someone bully you? If someone did, just tell me. I'll beat him half to death." He spoke with righteous indignation, but Xin Miao wanted to laugh. Mei Foran had an older brother who was extremely intelligent, and had given advice to Fu Xiuyi in the previous court. Fu Xiuyi then doted on Mei Foran, and it was not without her older brother's credit. Xin Miao herself was also envious, but at that time, Xinxiu was already dead. It seemed that she had not tasted the feeling of having a backer for a very long time. She was used to fighting alone and dividing herself into numerous people, so she was defeated by Mei Foran's hands in her previous life. Perhaps it was because she was alone. Now that there was someone protecting her, it was so beautiful that it was almost unreal. She slowly let go of her hands and raised her head to meet Xinxiu's concerned gaze. "Younger sister." Xinxiu was also startled. The young female in front of him had bright eyes, and when she faced him, there was no longer the impatience and annoyance in her eyes, and what replaced it was a kind of profoundness. That kind of feeling was somewhat unfamiliar to him as he carefully sized up the young female in front of him. After not seeing her for a year, Xin Miao had lost a lot of weight, and the originally somewhat round face had now revealed a sharp chin, making her look much more delicate. Her delicate facial features became more and more clear. That kind of naive tenderness had disappeared without a trace, and when she looked at him, there was a faint gratification and a kind of unknown loneliness. Chapter 151. Xin Miao sighed in her heart. Xinxiu had an almost youthful naivety, and this naivety made his temperament very valuable. Sincere and full of vitality, it was hard to imagine that such a person would end up drowning in the pond. At the beginning, people said that Xinxiu committed suicide because of his notoriety, but now thinking about it, with Xinxiu's perseverance, how could he commit suicide because of other people's pointing fingers? As for the initiator, her so-called sister-in-law, she used the excuse of climbing into the bed to force Xinxiu to marry her, but now it seemed that it might be someone else's conspiracy. Why does younger sister keep staring at me? Xinxiu was baffled. Is there something on my face? He felt that the current Xun Miao was strange. The Xun Miao who did not throw her temper and was not cold made Xinxiu feel unfamiliar, as if he was not facing a young lady. Why did eldest brother not go to the palace today? Xin Miao asked softly. His Majesty only summoned father and mother. Xinxiu smiled. Naturally, I will not follow. Younger sister, you still have not told me what happened yesterday. How did you get trapped in the ancestral hall's fire? His mind was preoccupied with this matter and was also concerned about Xin Miao's injury, so he had to clarify the ins and outs of the matter. Will eldest brother believe what I say? Xin Miao smiled gently. If you will not believe even if I say it, then there is no need to say it. Why would I not believe? When Xinxiu heard this, he quickly grabbed Xin Miao's arm. You are my younger sister. If I do not believe your words, who else would I believe? I can tell eldest brother about this matter, but eldest brother must promise me one thing. Do not tell father and mother about what I told you today. If it is said, I will no longer care about you. Why not tell father and mother? Shinshio was somewhat puzzled before suddenly realizing, could it be that this matter is related to His Highness Prince Ding? The letter that the Northwest received from the Ding capital also mentioned that Shun Miao had a special liking for Fu Xiu-yi. But Shun Miao was after all an unmarried female and did not know that the princes were fighting for the heir apparent. It was best for the officials not to interfere, as the earlier they interfered, the earlier they would die. Shin Miao, however, was unswerving towards Fu Xiu-yi. Shinexian and the rest were far away in the northwest. Even though they were anxious, they were helpless and could only hope that Shin Miao would be able to think it through and no longer love Fu Xiu-yi. It has nothing to do with him. Shin Miao did not know whether to laugh or cry. She said, before you all returned, Second Shan brought our Shen family's 3D young ladies to a long temple to offer incense. That day I exchanged rooms with eldest sister, and eldest sister's innocence was tainted by an evil person. Second Shin's family thought that eldest sister suffered for me and I was the initiator. I did not admit my mistake and punished me to copy Buddha's scriptures. When Shun Xiu heard this, his heart broke out in cold sweat, thinking that it was a close shave. The one who almost got into an accident was not Shin Qing but Shin Miao. When he heard it, he was extremely angry. What did this matter have to do with Shun Miao? Why was Shin Miao grounded? This is clearly sophistry, Shin Xiu said angrily. He did not have any good impression of Shin Qing, but because Shin Qing relied on Shen Yuan as her elder brother, she often did not put Shin Xiu in her eyes, and even ridiculed Shun Xiu as a martial man who did not know anything about literature. Not only that, Shen Miao continued, coincidentally, the assistant minister of the secretariat, the Wei family came to the residence to propose marriage. The one they picked was me. The Huang family of the junior residence supervisor also came to propose and picked eldest sister. Shin Xiu was stunned. Propose marriage? They had received letters from the Shin family, but there was no mention of Shun Miao's marriage. Wasn't this too absurd? How could there be a child's marriage that the parents didn't inform them? The Shin family's actions were really too much. The Wei family's young master, Wei Qian, is a young and talented man, while the Huang family's young master, Huang Dexing, is a homosexual. Second aunt wanted to swap me and eldest sister's marriage. When I found out about this, I could only say that I didn't want to marry. If I did get engaged, I would run away from the marriage. As a result, they locked me in the ancestral hall. The guards you saw yesterday were not there to put out the fire. They were there to guard me, to prevent me from escaping. Chapter 152. Shin Xiu's expression changed along with Shun Miao's narration, and finally, he heavily punched the table. The smile on his face had long disappeared, and his eyes were somewhat red as he looked at Shun Miao. Younger sister, is what you said true? Naturally, I do not need to lie to you. Shin Miao said, even that big fire came inexplicably, and I suspect. She smiled gently. After all, if I die, it would be more justifiable for eldest sister to remarry. Too much bullying. Shin Xiu shouted angrily and turned to leave. He was pulled back by Shin Miao and asked, where is eldest brother going? I will go and reason with them. Whoever touched you, let that person pay with blood, Shin Xiu said. Shin Miao looked at him and calmly asked, how do you plan to reason? Where is the evidence? Scold all of them or kill them all. The sarcasm in her tone made Shin Xiu slightly sober up. He turned back and looked at Shin Miao and asked with a frown, what does younger sister mean? Why does eldest brother not think about why I am not willing to tell father and mother about this matter? Shin Miao lightly said, father and mother are straightforward people and father is easily impulsive. It is very simple for him to stand up for me, but what about the following matter? The Shin family is a big family in Mingqi, and how many eyes are watching? Today, father will seek justice for me, but tomorrow, the censors will write a report against father. The corners of her lips curled up. In this world, the more people, the more power. Whoever has more people is in the right. The Shin family's 3 households, The first household against the second and third household and an old woman. Do you think that we can really be in the right? Shinshio was shocked by Shen Miao's words, but what made him even more surprised was Shen Miao's expression when she spoke. That kind of dull analysis was cruel to the point and made him raise his eyebrows. This was not something that someone of Shen Miao's age could say. Which unmarried female would be able to evaluate the world's affairs so coldly? He hesitated for a moment. Younger sister. Shen Miao took one look and knew what Shinshio was thinking in his heart. Shinshio was too straightforward, and it should be said that the entire first household of the Shin family was too straightforward, and in this difficult world, good people would not have a good ending. She said, "Eldest brother wants to ask why I have become like this now." Shen Miao's eyes hung down. Because I came over like this? After experiencing so many things, no one can remain the same. Big brother, I'm not who I used to be, and you're not who you used to be. Now, I only have one question. After listening to me, do you hate them? Shinshio was startled for a moment and looked at Shen Miao before slowly gritting his teeth. Hate? Why do you hate me? Because. How could they treat you like this? Shen Miao shook her head. That's not what you should hate. Shinshio was flabbergasted. He suddenly discovered that his younger sister's words made him more and more unable to understand, but faintly, he felt that what Shen Miao said was very reasonable. What you should hate is that we have given our sincerity and treated each other with sincerity, but what we got in return is a false friendship that is even worse than that of an enemy. For their own sake, they can take our lives. This isn't family. For strangers to harm us like this has long since become a blood feud. Between family members, it's even more sinful. Shen Miao looked at Shinshio and sighed in her heart. If it was possible, she even hoped that she could protect the youth in front of her well, and let him only know how to gallop on the battlefield for the rest of his life, and be a hero that was revered by the people. But she was really afraid. Afraid that one day, the scene by the pond would repeat itself. She could only build a wall in Shinshio's heart now. Remembering hatred was better than remembering hobbies, as love was the most hurtful. What does younger sister want to say? Shinshio finally said. Shen Miao gave a sigh of relief. Shinshio was not really stupid. Once he understood, some things would be much easier. I hate them, and eldest brother want to vent my anger. If father and mother were to take action, one cannot kill them all. Shen Miao said, I want to personally deal with them, but this requires eldest brother's help. No matter how Shenxian and Luo Shuiyan were, they did not have any evidence on their hands. If the second household were to be killed, according to Ming Qi's laws, one would have to pay with one's life. Shenxian might really do such a thing for her. She could use her own life to gamble, but was not willing to see Shenxian and wife take the risk. Death was the easiest thing to do. If one could escape unscathed, then a blunt knife would grind the flesh, and the ones who would feel pain would be those who were being grinded. Moreover, behind her bait, the big fish had not taken the bait. What does younger sister want to do? Shinshio asked. Shen Miao smiled. No rush. There is plenty of time. Let us slowly. Chapter 153. Shinshio and Shen Miao, this pair of siblings, had not talked for a long time like today. The guards outside the western courtyard were specially found by Shinshio and guarded outside so that others would not be able to enter. 2 hours was neither long nor short, as it was Shen Miao who was listening to Shinshio's words. Most likely Shinshio wanted to make Shen Miao happy and talked about some interesting things in the army and even indirectly inquired about what Shen Miao had experienced in this 1 year, but it was all avoided by Shen Miao. There were some things that it was not the time to talk about. Moreover, the current Shin family had not reached the point where they would frame the first household like in the previous lifetime, and it would be hard to believe even if it was said. At this moment, if one were to make a move, it must be a one-hit kill. Even if it was a blunt knife grinding the meat, one must first ensure that the skin was scraped off. After speaking some more, Shen Miao's face showed some fatigue. Shinshio was concerned about his younger sister, and upon seeing it, he said, Younger sister's body is not well, and it is not convenient for me to disturb. Rest for a while first. Father and mother will most likely return to the residence when it gets dark. When father and mother return, I will come over to see younger sister. Shen Miao nodded her head in agreement. Shinshio got up and was about to leave when he suddenly thought of something and hesitated for a moment before turning to look at Shun Miao. Younger sister, you said that Shun Qing's innocence was tainted by someone. Was the thief caught? It was to protect Shun Qing's reputation, but there are guards in the Shen residence, so there should be people to investigate in private. Shin Miao looked at him and her eyes curved. That thief is very cunning. One careless, and he escaped. So it was like this. Shinshio lowered his head thoughtfully and looked at Shin Miao with a calm smile. Since that is the case, I will leave first. He strode out of the room, and when he walked out of the door, the bright smile on his face suddenly disappeared and what was left was a haze. When the servants outside saw it, they could not help but shiver. It was as if they then deeply understood the iron blood in the bones of this young general's warm smile. He instructed the guards beside him, find 2 people to go to a long temple, and also check if there are any movements from the capital magistrate's side. He glanced at Shin Miao's closed door and clenched his fists as he whispered, Younger sister, what exactly happened in this year? In the room, Shin Miao said to Guyu who was walking in, Go take some money for Chun Tao and also find a servant to send some banknotes to Physician Chun. This is the most crucial time. We have to take good care of the baby in big sister's belly. She caressed the burned scar on her arm. The scar was particularly glaring on her fair skin, as if a piece of fine brocade had been burned. However, she didn't feel sad at all. She was satisfied as if she had made a good deal. I still have to rely on my unborn nephew for the rest of the show. Young lady, Jingzhe asked, just now why did not tell everything to eldest young master? What Shin Miao told Shinshio, she still concealed some things. For example, the evil person was Prince Yu of the first rank. Jingzhe said, if eldest young master were to take action, at least that one would not dare to act rashly. Moreover, if master and foreign knew about it, they would also protect young lady. Even if I do not say, eldest brother would investigate himself. Shin Miao looked out of the window, one fear that he would have already gone to inquire about the situation in Wulong Temple that day. But can eldest young master find out? Jingzhe was worried. If he were to find out, he would eventually know about it. What is the use of young lady hiding it? Prince Yu's way of doing things is watertight. If I did not guess wrongly, the monks in Wulong Temple had been changed inside and out. Not to mention eldest brother, even if it was father, one would not be able to find any traces. Heavens! Jingzhe covered her mouth. Does that mean that this matter would not come to light for a lifetime? The evil intentions of the second household of the Shin family and the shamelessness of Prince Yu. One thought that after Shin Xian and wife returned, they would be able to stand up for Shun Miao, but at this moment Shun Miao's words almost meant that everything that happened in Wulong Temple that day had been buried deeply and no one knew the truth. Chapter 154. I did not intend to use such a fair method to seek justice for myself, Shin Miao lightly said. In this world, there are still many ways to achieve one's goal. Justice. It was not even comparable to grass. Justice restrained the weak, but for the truly strong, they themselves were the justice. In those years in the imperial harem, she understood many things. It wasn't that there weren't good women in the imperial harem, but those women were like flowers in winter, too weak. They couldn't even withstand the wind and were crushed into mud. Since she was walking on a dark and bloody path, then the means she used along the way would not be able to see the light. But what can young lady do? Jingzhe said. At least master and foreign can protect young lady, and if it is possible, they can help young lady vent. Young lady is after all an unmarried female, and even if one wanted to take revenge, there would be many inconveniences. Jingzhe wholeheartedly spoke for Shen Miao. Father and mother's hearts are filled with resentment, so they would directly go against the residents of Prince Yu, and if they retreat, they can only protect me and make Prince Yu fearful. Shen Miao said, but it is impossible for the Shen family to go against the residents of Prince Yu unscathed. If it is only for deterrence, then it is not what I wish to do. Jingzhe was more and more unable to understand. Shin Miao's meaning was not to let Shin Xian vent his anger on Prince Yu, and also not to let Shin Xian deter Prince Yu so that Prince Yu would not dare to have any ideas on Shin Miao. But looking at Shin Miao, it was obvious that she would not let this matter go. What was Shun Miao's intention? Shin Miao smiled gently. If one offends me, I will exterminate the entire family. Jingzhe was shocked and subconsciously looked up at Shen Miao, but saw that the young female was bathed in the morning sun and the smile on her lips was pure and innocent, but it was like a young beast in the dark forest, quietly revealing its fangs. Her heart was shocked, and at that moment she felt terrified and could not ask a single question as she lowered her head in fear. Thinking that Shun Xiu was right about one thing, how was it that in a short 1 year, Shen Miao seemed to have completely changed? Not to mention Shen Xiu, even the maids that were with Shan Miao day and night were not able to find any traces. Shen Miao narrowed her eyes in satisfaction. Since the person had returned, the chess game could start. Shen Miao was a small pawn. Prince Yu was the chariot, and the imperial family of Ming Qi was like a white chess piece. When would that rooster be swallowed and be eliminated? Everything was up to the will of heaven. This time, heaven's will was in her hands. Residents of the Marquis of Lineage. Even though it was a harsh winter day, the entire Marquis's mansion was still beautifully decorated. When the late Marquis's wife, Princess Yu Qing, was alive, she loved flowers and grasses the most. When she was married to the Marquis of Lineage, there were sweet words of love and harmony. Xieding doted on Princess Yu Qing and renovated the entire Marquis residence to look like the princess hall that Princess Yu Qing resided in. At that time, it had caused quite a stir. A general had renovated his residence to such an exquisite degree. It was truly a bit comical. Later on, when Princess Yu Qing passed away, Xieding still preserved all the scenery when Princess Yu Qing was alive. They hired professionals to protect and take care of the place. So after so many years, even in winter, this place still didn't feel gloomy. However, although the scenery was prosperous, it was not the scenery but the people who were depressed. Things remain the same, but people have changed. This was an irresistible problem on the road of life. In the end, he couldn't return to the past even if he forced himself to maintain a facade. Xiechong Wu and Xiechong Chao were practicing their spears in the courtyard. Ever since the academy examinations, both of them rarely left the residence. Firstly, it was because that day when Xie Jingxing challenged both of them alone, it made them lose all their face, and they really did not have the face to go out. Secondly, it was because their injuries were not completely healed and they were unable to exercise. Speaking of which, Xie Jingxing seemed to be playing it down that day, but in actual fact, his attacks were extremely heavy. It would take 100 days for one's muscles and bones to recover, and even after recuperating for a few months, they would still feel some pain. Madame Fong was extremely distressed, but did not dare to say anything to Xieding. Even so, Xieding still scolded both of them. Chapter 155. Thinking of this, the two brothers gritted their teeth in hatred. Xie Chong Chao swung his arm. That day, when Xie Jingxing stepped on his shoulder, there was still a dull pain. He said, "Second older brother, one heard that Shen Exine and wife entered the palace today. This time they have achieved military merits. One fear that His Majesty will reward Shen Xiu." The Shun and Xie families were in deep discord. Xie Chong Wu and Xie Chong Chao did not view Shen Xiu as a thorn in their eyes because of the Shun and Xie families' political stance. In fact, they viewed all the youths in the capital as their opponents. And Shen Xiu was undoubtedly the most outstanding among those youths. Even though Xie Jingxing was also outstanding, Xie Jingxing did not become an official, and with Xieding's protection, they could do nothing even if they wanted to. But Shen Xiu was different. If Xie Chong Wu and Xie Chong Chao were to become an official, one fear that everyone would compare the two brothers with the D sons of the first household of the Shen family. And what Xie Chong Wu and Xie Chong Chao hated the most was to be inferior to others. "What are you afraid of?" Xie Chong Wu said in disdain. "Only a martial artist who only knows how to fight and kill, and does not know anything about the matters of the court. In the Shen family, other than Shan Xian's military merits, what can Shan Xian do? Now the Shen family is also an arrow at the end of its flight. It looks good, but in the end..." He suddenly stopped and did not continue speaking. "Second older brother is right." Xie Chong Chao smiled, who asked the Shen family to be a neutral party. In this world, it is only a dream to want to be virtuous. But many thanks to the Shen family's stupidity, at least in the future, we will have one less opponent. If the conversation between the two of them was known by others, one feared that they would be shocked. After all, Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongchao had a noble appearance on the outside, and the Xie family did not participate in the fight for the heir-apparent position. But just now Xie Chongwu and Xie Chongchao's words hinted that they had gone behind the Xie family's back to a certain faction. Speaking of which, the Shen family is not to be feared as we still have one in our own family. Xie Chongchao suddenly turned to another direction. That direction was the courtyard where Princess Yuqing was recuperating, and it was also the courtyard where Xie Jingxing was currently staying. He thought of Xie Jingxing pointing the spear at his head during the academy examinations, and a gloomy feeling rose in his chest. After a while, he said, "That bastard is getting more and more arrogant." He actually called Xie Jingxing a scoundrel in private, and if they met on normal days, he would be very respectful, which really made one speechless. That's right. Xie Chongchao followed Xie Chongwu's words and said, "These days he is more well-behaved and father values him more. Could it be that there's an expert guiding him? Is there some kind of conspiracy?" Xie Jingxing had been stubborn for so many years and did not enter officialdom. Even though it was a headache, it made the two Xie brothers secretly relieved. But even so, when people mentioned the young Marquis Xie, other than being cynical, they were full of praise for his heroic bearing on the battlefield. Not only that, no matter how Xie Jingxing opposed Xie Ding treated Xie Jingxing wholeheartedly. Instead, his attitude towards his two filial sons was lukewarm. As a result, the jealousy towards Xie Jingxing seemed to grow more and more intense over the past 10 years. In the past, as long as Xie Jingxing was in the Ding capital, something big would happen every 3 to 5 days. But ever since the academy examinations incident, he seemed to have changed his temperament and lived in seclusion every day, not knowing what he was busy with. But this kind of uncharacteristic quietness made Xie Ding very gratified, and even felt that Xie Jingxing had finally put away his stubbornness and was going to do serious things. Because of this, Xie Chongchao and Xie Chongwu were even more nervous. Who cares what expert guide him? Xie Chongwu sneered. There will be a day when he will be stepped on by my feet. At the beginning, that woman was a princess and did not end up well, much less a son. Chapter 156. In short, it is better to build a close relationship with His Highness Prince Ding during the returning banquet, Xie Chongchao said before raising his spear and fiercely pierced it into the haystack in front of him. And at this time, the main character of the two people's discussion was sitting at the table in the room. The courtyard where Princess Yuqing was recuperating was filled with flowers and plants, and some trees were still lush even in winter. In front of Xie Jingxing's room, the branches and leaves of the trees almost blocked the entire window. Even if it was daytime, the room always looked gloomy. However, amidst the gloomy atmosphere, the young man's eyes were as bright as the sun. The guard in front of him handed him a letter. He read it carefully and threw it into the warm stove in the room. In an instant, ashes flew out and the letter disappeared without a trace. "What do you mean?" A figure came from behind. The white-clad gentleman was leisurely pouring tea for himself. His posture was elegant, as if he was really tasting tea with someone. "The situation has changed." Xie Jingxing did not turn back and seemed to be thinking about something. "Oh." The white-clad gentleman paused and frowned as he looked at him. "Was it not long ago, Gao Yang?" Xie Jingxing suddenly said, "How about breaking before establishing, dying before settling? You are not this kind of character." Gao Yang was surprised for a moment before shaking his head. "Don't you always like to hide your strength and bide your time, and only take action when everything is fixed? If the result is not to win and not do anything, it would surprise me that you, who is used to planning, would say it like this." He asked, "Did you encounter something?" "Met a lunatic." Xie Jingxing raised his brows. "Made me suddenly feel that it is not bad to gamble." He stood up. The purple robes were embroidered with gold cloud patterns. If one did not look carefully, one would not be able to see it, but in the dim light, there was a faint bright brilliance. "Could it be that you were talking about the daughter of the Shin family?" Gao Yang hit the nail on the head. "I have heard from Tai Yi about that day's matter. Even though it was bold, it was too reckless. Now that Shin Xian has returned, one feared that with Shin Xian's character, he would make a big fuss. The thing is not in the Shin family. Xie Jingxing said, I have changed my mind, not planning to use the Shin family. Gao Yang was somewhat surprised. There are too many variables in the Shin family. Xie Jingxing shook his head. The youth's handsome brows lost the usual frivolity and showed a calmness beyond his age. His natural elegance and nobility gave him a layer of mysterious luster that was even more dazzling than the blazing sun in the sky. What do you mean by variable? Gao Yang asked. Xie Jingxing's lips hooked up towards the Fu family's attitude. I have a premonition that in the future structure of Ming Qi, the Shin family will become the biggest variable. Gao Yang seemed to be in slight disbelief. However, his trust in the youth ultimately won over the doubt in his heart. He said, How do you know? On what basis did the Shin family become a variable? Shin Xiao? Shin Xian? Even if there is a problem within the Shin family, it does not represent the entire Shin family's attitude. There is a smart person in the Shin family, Xie Jingxing said lazily, but fate is too cruel. What is the use of struggling? He said, in short, there is a change in the plan. Change the method. You can't be thinking. Gao Yang was moved. For so many years, I have endured for too long, Xie Jingxing said. Because of concerns, one could endure. But now? He smiled. It was as if the dark clouds had suddenly retreated and the sunlight poured into the room. In a moment, the beautiful scenery lost its color, and there was no light. Xie Jingxing stood with his hands behind his back and lightly said, Gao Yang, I am tired of lying low. I will take action in the shortest time possible. But are you willing? Gao Yang asked. There is nothing to be unwilling about. Gao Yang sighed, and when he raised his head again, it had become firm. Since that is the case, then do as you say. Temporarily hide it from that side, and we will start from Ming Qi's side. In the Fu family, who do you think we should start from? Old rules. Throw a ball, and whoever catches it first, it will be that person. He smiled lightly, but his fingers touched something in his sleeves and his heart moved. His fingertips took out a delicate little bottle. That was the medicine bottle that Gao Yang gave him. In the medicine bottle was what Gao Yang called a priceless medicine that was specially used to treat scars. Gao Yang said that with this plaster, no matter how deep the scar was, it would fade away cleanly. He held the medicine bottle in his fist, and when he released his palm, the delicate little bottle had already turned into powder. Just like what Shin Miao did, a big fire would burn away all the false balance and expose the ferocious truth, which was the real pattern to take action. Shin Miao used her own scars to eliminate the possibility of reconciliation in the future. Then what about him? His gaze lightly swept out of the window to the dark skies of the residence of the Marquis of Lineage. After so many years, he had seen it too many times. Because of the warmth in his memories, he was also willing to maintain the false balance. Now it was time to break this balance. He closed his eyes, and his long eyelashes were as beautiful as the wings of a butterfly in spring, but when he opened his eyes, his gaze was sharper than the sharpest knife. In front of his table, there was a map that was spread out. That map was not anything else, but looking at it seriously, it was the map of Ming Qi's territory. From the 13 capitals of Yuzhou to the northern desert Dingyuan City, from Jiangnanzhou province to Dingxi's eastern sea, from the ancient city of Lin and to the ancient city of Luoyang. In the center of the territory was the most flourishing Ding capital. The mountains and rivers were turbulent, and the heroes of the world came forth in large numbers. He stretched out his hand and gently wiped the center of the territory map with his finger, as if it was deciding the rise and fall of a dynasty. Chapter 157. Shin Xian and wife finally returned to the residence in the evening. Accompanying them back to the mansion was a carriage full of rewards from the palace. If it was in the past, these rewards would definitely have been confiscated. But today, Luo Shuiyan had the servants carry the chests directly into the west courtyard. The rewards from the palace were either rich or expensive. The servants in the eastern courtyard could only watch as the boxes passed by their courtyard, and from time to time, there were sounds of things breaking in Rongjing Tang. It was obvious that old Shin Foreign, who had taken advantage of the situation, was furious and was throwing a tantrum for others to see. But those who came out from the military would not be affected by such a tantrum. The boxes were still being moved and were extremely efficient as they were quickly moved. Shin Miao was sitting at the table reading. She was reading about Ming Qi's politics and laws. Previously, when Gu Yu and the rest found her poems and songs, she just threw them to one side and did not even take a look. She only heard a hearty laughter coming from outside the door. Jiao Jiao. Shin Miao turned her head and saw Shin Xian striding in from the door with Luo Shuiyan following behind. Most likely they had just returned to the residence and rushed over as they did not even change their clothes. Shin Xiu walked at the back and made a face at her. Shin Miao stood up and bowed to them. Father, mother, eldest brother. Her gentle appearance made Shin Xian and wife startled for a moment. Shin Miao was not close to them, and in the past when she came back, she would leave after saying a few words and was extremely impatient. This kind of amiable appearance had not been seen for a long time. However, in that gentleness, there seemed to be a trace of alienation. This kind of alienation was very slight, but as parents, Shin Xian and Luo Shuiyan were still sensitive to it. Shin Miao sighed slightly in her heart. She was unable to act like a real 14-year-old girl and act coquettishly with Shin Xian, and it was even more impossible to pretend that nothing had happened. In the previous life, she was the one who dragged down the Shin family, and when facing Shin Xian and Luo Shuiyan, there was only a strong sense of guilt in her heart. Luo Shuiyan's heart only paused for a moment, and her concern for her daughter quickly overshadowed that bit of doubt. She took a few steps forward and grabbed Shin Miao's hand and asked anxiously, "How is Jiao Jiao's body? Do you feel that anything is wrong?" "I'm fine," Shin Miao replied with a smile. "Jiao Jiao, father obtained several large chests of treasures from the palace today. When your body is better, tomorrow morning you can go and pick what you like. Those jewelry and hairpins. One heard that they are the first in the Ding capital." Shin Xian's words were somewhat flattering. Such a big and burly man carefully trying to please his daughter made one feel that it was somewhat comical. Shin Miao smiled faintly. "Thank you, father, but this is not urgent. Just lock those treasures in the storeroom of our courtyard. After a long time, when I think of the day that I am interested, I will go pick them out." As soon as he said this, the expressions of the people in the room changed. In the past at this time, when Shin Xian carried the chest back, naturally he would let Shin Miao choose first, and the rest would be sent to the public. He had always doted on his daughter like this, and no one refuted his words because these rewards were obtained by Shin Xian with real swords and spears. But if it was in the past, Shin Miao would definitely not pick first, and would let Shin Yu and Shen Qing finish picking first. After the second and third household picked, she would then start to pick. Naturally, it was because she was close to the second and third household that she would do so. But today, not only did Shin Miao not decline, she even suggested to lock the chests in the storeroom of her own courtyard. Even though Shin Xian did not intend to confiscate the rewards this time, but the change in Shin Miao's attitude towards the rest of the Shin family was clearly seen by everyone. Chapter 158. Even if they did not understand the matters of the inner courtyard, they could see that something was wrong with Shin Miao. Shin Xiu opened his mouth, but Luo Shuiyan held Shin Miao's hands and softly said, "Jiao Jiao, tell mother what happened. Father and mother are back, and no one would dare to bully you in the future." "No one dares to bully me." Shin Miao smiled. "Nothing happened to me. What exactly happened on that day when the ancestral hall caught fire?" Shin Xian asked in a deep voice. "Why did you stay in the ancestral hall alone?" Both husband and wife entered the palace early in the morning to meet the emperor and only left people to investigate in secret, but there was no time to investigate the strangeness. "I made a mistake and was locked in the ancestral hall." "Who knew that the ancestral hall suddenly caught fire?" she said awkwardly. When Shen Xiu, who was behind, saw this, he wanted to say something but stopped. He knew what was going on, but Shin Miao repeatedly told him not to tell the matter to Shin Xian and wife. Even though he wanted to tell his father and mother the truth, Shin Miao said that if Shen Xiu did not keep the secret, she would no longer care about Shin Xiu, so he dispelled this idea. Shin Xian indeed asked Shin Miao, "What mistake did you make?" Even if it was a big mistake, you should not be locked in the ancestral hall alone. Oh, Shun Miao played it down. I contradicted second Shu in front of Zumu and others. What? Luo Shuiyan's eyebrows were raised, but she did not reprimand Shin Miao but said, Number 2 is really getting older and older. A grown man arguing with a young female. Do you not have any face? Gu Yu and Jingzhe, who were serving in the room, twitched their lips. The first household of the Shun family were the most protective, and it was indeed not nonsense. Even if Shun Miao hit Shin Gue, one fear that Shin Xian and wife would blame Shin Gue for making Shan Miao's hands sore. Younger sister, why did you contradict second Shu? Shin Xiu could not help but ask. Most likely it is because I am not willing to marry. Shin Miao said. Marry? Luo Shuiyan and Shan Xian exclaimed at the same time. Luo Shuiyan looked at Shin Miao and asked anxiously, Marry what person? How come your father and I do not know? Shin Miao lowered her head. The assistant minister of the Legislative Bureau's Wei family proposed marriage for their son, Wei Qian, and even exchanged the Gung invitation, but I am not willing to marry, so I contradicted in public. Wei Qian. Shin Xian pondered for a moment. The Wei family is a large family, and the son of the Wei family seems to be a young, outstanding talent. If one were to talk about it, it would be similar to Jiao Jiao. He was actually seriously looking at this marriage again. Shin Xian had been an official for so many years, and even though he was not in the Ding capital, he had a good understanding of his colleagues in the officialdom. If the Wei family was some prodigal son, he would naturally be able to tell at a glance, but Wei Qian was a rare son-in-law. Shin Xian thought of other things for a moment. What are you thinking about? Luo Shuiyan roared. He is the heavenly king. Even if he is the emperor, Jiao Jiao can't refuse. Luo Shuiyan's words were shocking. She was a valiant female born from a military family in the northwest, and her marriage with Shan Xian was fought for by herself. Thus Luo Shuiyan could not bear to see all the arranged matchmaking words of parents. She said, moreover, both of us do not know about this matter, so who knows what kind of intentions they have. Ever since she saw Shin Miao trapped in the Sea of Fire and Ran Wanyun and the rest were calm and composed, Luo Shuiyan was filled with disgust towards the rest of the Shin family, and her previous good impression was swept away. Shin Xian also frowned. It was reasonable to say that the Wei family had such a good marriage, and if it was arranged to Shin Miao, it would not be considered a loss. After all, it was rare to pick out such a good young outstanding talent in the Ding capital. But since it was such a good marriage, why did the Shin family hide it from them husband and wife? Shin Xiu's lips curled up. He knew what was going on and was also somewhat resentful that Shin Miao did not tell the rest of the Shin family about the idea of exchanging the marriage. However, he could only remain silent. He did not know why, but every time Shan Miao's gaze swept over to him, there was a kind of deterrent force. Shun Xiu himself was not willing to believe that he, who was invincible in the battlefield, would actually be afraid of his own younger sister. Chapter 159. But Jiao Jiao, Shin Xian spoke softly, the eldest son of the Wei family is not bad. For you to be so resistant, is it because there is already a male that you admire? You. He wanted to speak, but stopped. In the letters that the Shen family sent, there were frequent reports of Shan Miao being infatuated with Prince Ding. In this world, if Shen Miao liked any male, he and Luo Shuiyan would not obstruct, but the Tian family was different. Now that it was the time for the princes to fight for the throne, if the Shin family were to get involved, one feared that they would be dragged into the quagmire. But these matters, Shen Miao, this kind of young lady, would not understand. On the way back, Shin Xian and Luo Shuiyan had discussed numerous times on how to persuade Shin Miao to dispel this idea, but at the end they were helpless. Shin Miao had a stubborn temperament, and once she had decided on something, even 9 bulls would not be able to pull her back. Moreover, to tell a young lady to give up her sweetheart, if it was another person, one feared that they would not be able to accept it. With one look, Shin Miao knew what Shin Xian wanted to say and said lightly, "There is no one in my heart, and the reason why I am not willing to marry was because I heard that the young master of the Wei family already has someone in his heart. No matter how good he is, he already has moonlight in his heart." Why should I be the one who breaks up the affectionate couple and make him lose his life for nothing? Her words made Shin Xian and wife somewhat dizzy. How could Shin Miao say such mature words? It was as if she was a married woman who had seen thousands of ships. Secondly, what did she say about not having anyone in her heart? Shin Miao only gradually understood Wei Qian after she became the Empress in her previous lifetime. In the past lifetime, there was no mention of the Wei family coming up to propose marriage, as Wei Qian also married his own Biao younger sister. As a rare young talent in the Ding capital, Wei Qian doted on his wife, and at that time there was a good story about it. From this, it could be deduced that Wei Qian and Biao Mei were childhood sweethearts. It was likely that when the Wei family came to propose marriage, that young Master Wei would not be willing. Jiao Jiao, don't you like His Highness Prince Ding? Luo Shuiyan gritted her teeth and asked, Prince Ding? When Shun Miao heard it, she said lightly, His Highness Prince Ding is a descendant of the heavens. How can I climb up to him? Back then, I didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Now that I've calmed down, I realize that I've gone too far. I don't dare to mention this matter anymore. Luo Shuiyan was surprised for a moment. Shin Xian and Shin Xiu were after all males, and it was all right if they did not understand. Even though she had a carefree temperament, she was still a female. Females understood the feelings in a female's heart the best. She thought that Shin Miao was only saying it, but after carefully looking at Shin Miao's expression, she discovered that when Prince Ding was mentioned, Shin Miao did not have any trace of change in expression, as if she was talking about a stranger. Not waiting for Luo Shuiyan to speak, Shin Xian himself cried out first, Jiao Jiao, father does not agree with your words. No matter who our Shun family matches, you are able to climb up. Which disciple of Ming Qi would dare to despise you, even if... Cough. Luo Shuiyan coughed lightly and glared fiercely at Shin Xian. It was all right for Shin Xian to praise his daughter, but it was not easy for Shin Miao to dispel the thoughts of Prince Ding. Wasn't Shin Xian creating trouble for himself? Shin Xian also knew that he had said the wrong thing, so he quickly looked away as if nothing had happened. Luo Shuiyan looked at Shin Miao again, and when she saw her calm expression, she was relieved and smiled. Jiao Jiao is still young, and there is no rush to marry. There are so many good males in Ming Qi, and our Jiao Jiao is outstanding. So would there be any fear of not being able to find a good husband? Rest assured, our Jiao Jiao's husband would definitely be an indomitable hero. Shin Miao's eyes drooped down as she smiled and did not say anything. Her fantasies of the person beside her had long been wiped clean after being disheartened time and time again in the inner palace in her previous life. In this lifetime, she had long decided not to marry, but these words could not be known by Shin Xian and wife. Ordinary females would always be a little shy when they heard about their own marriage. Moreover, in the eyes of the husband and wife, Shun Miao was not a cold and hard person. But after Luo Shuiyan's words, they did not see any reaction from Shin Miao, and both of them could not help but feel somewhat depressed. Even though Shin Miao was not close to them in the past, they still understood Shin Miao's temperament. Now that she returned, Shin Miao had become more and more unfamiliar. In one night, she had matured so much that Shin Xian and wife did not know how to treat their daughter. If they were to coax and persuade like before, they would look like fools when facing Shan Miao's calm eyes. Chapter 160. When Shin Xiu saw the embarrassment of his parents, he laughed out loud. Shin Xian and his wife were feared on the battlefield, but in front of his younger sister, they were at a loss. But Shin Xiu's gaze gradually darkened. A person's temperament would not change so much overnight. Something must have happened for a proud and willful little girl to become so calm and steady. Father, Shin Miao suddenly spoke. After a few days, the palace will hold a returning banquet. The returning banquet was for the Shin family's army to defeat the enemy, and the emperor held a banquet to reward them according to their merits. All the civil and military officials had to bring their families to attend, and it was considered a banquet for the officials of the royal family who were closer to them. At the returning banquet, the emperor would reward the meritorious officials according to their contributions. In the previous life, during the returning banquet a few days later, the emperor wanted to promote Shan Xiu's official position, but because of Shan Miao's matter, Shen Exine put up a whole body of meritorious services and got the emperor to agree to the marriage bestowal and obtained the title of Ding Wangfei from Shen Miao. A woman asking for a man's hand in marriage was something that was out of line. Shen Exine had dominated his entire life on the battlefield, but at the last moment, he did not hesitate to use his merits to beg for his daughter, and almost ended up being the laughing stock of the entire court. At that time, Shen Miao was only happy to become Ding Wangfei and did not see Shen Exine's bitter smile. From the moment she married into the residence of Prince Ding, it meant that the Shen family was tied onto Prince Ding's boat, and Fu Xiaoyi had an honorable reason to squeeze the last bit of value out of the Shen family army.
Yes.
Shen Exine smiled and asked, "Is there something that Jiao Jiao wants? Father can help you ask His Majesty for it." This level of pampering was like a pearl in the palm. Shen Miao's mouth was somewhat dry. Why did she not discover her father's feelings for her in her previous life? Although the destruction of the Shen family was driven by the enemy, it was also because of her stubbornness and blindness. "I don't have anything I want." Shen Miao smiled gently, "but if His Majesty wants to reward Father..." She paused, and when she raised her head again, her eyes were clear and bright. She said, "Father can request from His Majesty to stay in the capital for half a year and accompany me. What do you think?" When these words were spoken, Luo Shuiyan, Shen Exine, and Shun Xiu were all startled. Shen Miao would never ask them to stay because they were not by their side since they were young and their feelings were not close, so naturally they would not be reluctant. Every year after the end of the year, Shen Exine and wife would leave the capital to defend the northwest region. Even if there were no enemy troops, they had to guard their territory to prevent foreign enemies from invading. Actually, there was no need for this, but the emperor still personally appointed him every year. In addition, when the old general was alive, he also had this habit, so he never refuted it. But Shun Miao was clearly asking them to stay. She was urging Shen Exine and wife to stay and let them set off half a year later. This was somewhat out of line, but in Shen Exine and wife's ears, they were wild with joy, as at least this meant that Shen Miao did not treat them without any feelings. Of course, delighted by the change in his daughter's attitude, Shen Exine agreed without even thinking clearly about the problem. Luo Shuiyan was also somewhat excited. Shen Xiu, who was at the side, curled his lips. He did not want to stay in the Ding capital. To him, there was really nothing interesting in the Ding capital. Those noble family's disciples were not interested, so it would be better to let him fight in the northwest desert. But looking at Shun Miao's face, his heart softened. At least with him by her side, it was good that no one in the Ding capital dared to bully Shen Miao. After speaking a few more words, Shen Exine and wife left with Shun Xiu. After they left, Shun Miao closed the scroll on the table and walked to the window. "Young lady," Guyu softly said. Chun Tao had already informed that eldest young lady's stomach is fine. One heard that second foreign and second master are quarreling about eldest young lady's marriage. Chapter 161. Shen Miao smiled coldly. Renwan Yun's good plan of marrying the sisters had already gone down the drain with Shun Exine's return to the residence. If Shen Qing was to be married to Huang Dexing, naturally Renwan Yun would not be willing. But the Gung invitation had already been exchanged, and both families had already agreed on it. It was not an easy thing to go back on one's words at this time. Lifting a rock to smash one's own feet, this was the logic. Of course, Renwan Yun's idea fell through, and she would not let her have an easy time. The poisonous snake wanted to counterattack, but in a few days' time at the returning banquet, she also wanted to catch Renwan Yun's weak point in front of everyone and catch Prince Yu unprepared. Outside the door, Luo Shuiyan's and Shun Exine's face sunk. Luo Shuiyan said angrily, "What is the matter with old Tie-Dye and your few younger brothers? Arranging Jiao Jiao's marriage for no rhyme or reason. This is the first time I heard of such logic in my life." "Foreign need not be angry," Shen Exine said. "I will immediately go and find old Tie-Dye to clarify. Once there is such matter, I will immediately explain it to the Wei family. To hide it like this, one fear that there is something fishy. I guess that Jiao Jiao had suffered a lot in this year," Luo Shuiyan said unhappily. "Later I will call Jiao Jiao and the few maids over to ask clearly what happened. Gue Momo is also missing." After all, she was a person who had been on the battlefield and would have a certain sensitivity towards these things. She said, I see that what Jiao Jiao said is not wrong. Staying in the Ding capital for half a year. If these monsters are not sorted out clearly, one fear that daughter's life would be gone. As she spoke, she glared at Shen Xian. Shen Xian touched his nose and naturally knew that Luo Shuiyan was dissatisfied with his two brothers. Not to mention Luo Shuiyan, he himself was also full of anger. He instructed the two guards beside him, guard young lady well these few days. If there is anything wrong, immediately inform me. If young lady has any mishap, you will be punished according to military law. Finishing, he looked at Shinshio and frowned. Brat, why are you in a daze? Shinshio only recovered from Shen Xian's roar and said vaguely, Oh, I was thinking about something and was distracted. He had been thinking about Shun Miao's matter. The people who were sent to a long temple today had already returned with news. They did not discover anything wrong. No one discovered what happened that day. Shinshio was not a fool and naturally knew that this was because all the insiders had been sent away. To be able to do this without a trace, it did not seem to be the Shin family's style. Hiding the truth from Shen Miao made Shinshio even more suspicious. Unknowingly, his younger sister was becoming more and more unfathomable. Look at the time. Shen Xian vented the anger from foreign onto his unfortunate son. Go and investigate the matters in the residence. I will come and ask you tomorrow. Shinshio agreed with a bitter face. He did know the ins and outs of the matter, but his younger sister did not allow him to say it. The Kaiyun court was in a complete mess. When Shen Gui left, he quarreled with Ran Wanyun. Ever since the day Shen Xian returned from Old Shan Foreign's birthday banquet, Shen Gui had a conflict with Ran Wanyun because of this matter. In fact, Shen Gui also knew that Ran Wanyun was grounded, but to him, once something happened, he would naturally push all the blame onto Ran Wanyun. The reason why he and Shen Wan were able to reach this stage today was all because of the connections that Shen Xian left behind. Even though they had a certain status in the court, but if Shen Xian had the intention to do something bad to them, Shen Gui's and Shen Wan's careers would be in a mess. This was a world where martial arts were respected. Even though the civil officials ridiculed the military generals as unbearably crude, but whoever had the military power would be more important in Ming Qi. Between the civil officials and the military generals, the emperor would naturally protect the military generals. Previously, the two brothers were watertight in front of Shen Xian, and Shen Xian was also happy to take care of them. But who knew that this time Shen Xian would personally see Shen Miao in a sea of fire? Shen Xian saw Shen Miao as his life, and Shen Gui was flustered at what he would do in anger. Ever since Shen Xian returned, Shen Gui was extremely irritated and Ren Wanyun had to mention breaking off the marriage at this time. It was like adding oil to the fire, and all the dissatisfaction towards Ren Wanyun broke out. Chapter 162. Today was the same. He angrily quarreled with Ran Wanyun, and after leaving the sentence that Shen Qing must marry into the Huang family, Shen Gui brushed his sleeves and left Ran Wanyun, who was so angry that she almost fainted. Bastard! Bastard! Ren Wanyun touched her chest, and her lips were trembling. Shen Gui did not care about his daughter's happiness and wholeheartedly wanted to climb into the Huang family to add bricks and tiles to his career, making Ren Wanyun so angry that she was in a complete mess. Now that Shen Xian had returned and Luo Shuiyan was not an easy person to get along with. If it was not that the matter was extremely confidential, and if Shen Xian and wife knew that she had the idea of exchanging sister's marriage, one fear that they would have the heart to kill her. Even if Shen Xian and wife were not able to discover it this time, the fire in the ancestral hall would leave an estrangement in the first household, and it would be difficult to take action against Shen Miao in the future. Ren Wanyun hated that she could not hack Shen Miao into 1,000 pieces. At the beginning, it was Shen Miao who schemed against Shen Qing, and if it was not for Shen Miao, how would Shen Qing end up marrying a cut sleeve? Now that Shen Miao had Shen Xian's protection, it would not be easy to play tricks on the marriage. Foreign, calm down, Xiang Lan said as she soothed Ran Wanyun. Do not let anger harm your health. It is the returning banquet in a few days, and if you are angered badly, then you cannot go out. Run Wan Yun's eyes moved and a sinister smile appeared on her face. You are right. I cannot let anger harm my health. Returning banquet. Returning banquet. I want that little slut to live a life worse than death. She turned her head to look at Kaiju. Has the letter that was sent to Prince Yu residence arrived? It has already been sent. Kaiju said carefully. Since my Chinger will not end well, then that little slut should not think of escaping. A sneer appeared on Ryan Wanyun's face. I cannot do anything to her as Shin Xian is protecting her. If they have the ability, then they will go against Prince Yu residence. Her appearance was like a vicious snake that spat out its tongue. There will be someone who can tidy her up. Prince Yu residence. In the magnificent main hall, there were beautiful Persian dancers wearing thin clothes dancing. Their snow-white bare feet stepped on the soft carpet, and there were colorful bells tied around their ankles that made a melodious sound as they danced. Her snake-like waist danced nimbly. The middle-aged man on the high seat had an ugly and ferocious face, and his left leg was empty. It was Prince Yu. At the moment, there was a petite young female kneeling under him. The young female was about 11 or 12 years old and was still very young. She had delicate features, but her eyes were filled with fear. At the moment, she was not wearing anything and was gently massaging Prince Yu's legs. This young girl's snow-white body was covered with purple and green bruises. Upon closer inspection, there were even red whip marks. Clearly, she had experienced an extraordinary amount of pain and torture. Prince Yu of the first rank looked at the letter in his hands and suddenly smiled before slapping the lion head on his seat. His action caused the girl to scream in fear. She fell to the ground and couldn't help but shiver. Shin Xian. Prince Yu's mouth slowly chewed on a few words. Shin Miao. Dare to fool this prince. After that night's matter, because he found other interesting things, he threw the matter to the back of his mind. To Prince Yu, these young females were just amusing toys, like those cats and dogs. As for what would happen in the future, he did not care at all. In addition, with Shin Gui's concealment, he did not find anything wrong. It was only until this letter came that he finally remembered that something was wrong that day. That Shen Miao had such good means. At the same time as she counterattacked Ren Wanyun, she also played with him. In Ming Qi, even if Prince Yu was a member of the imperial family, other than the emperor, everyone had to be courteous to him. Shen Miao was just a little female and dared to step on his dignity. If it was previously, he only had some interest in playing with Shen Miao. This time Prince Yu was really angry and had the intention to kill. It was just that Shin Xian was still protecting in the Ding capital, so how could he make a move? Or perhaps he could also settle Shin Xian at the same time. Prince Yu touched his chin, and a trace of ruthlessness flashed in his eyes. Chapter 163. 3 days later, the royal family held a banquet to return to the capital. All the civil and military officials brought their families to attend. Even though it was said that the ruler and officials were celebrating together, everyone was well aware that this returning banquet was only the emperor's celebration banquet for Shan Xian. The Shin family held great power in their hands, and also had fierce generals like Shin Xian and Shin Xiu. If used well, it would be a good knife to protect Ming Qi. If used improperly, it could threaten the person sitting on the chair at any time. Towards the Shin family, the imperial family of Ming Qi was both reliant and guarded against them, but in front of them, the Shun family was at least safe when the foreign lands had not been purged. As long as the Shun family did not recklessly wade into the muddy waters of the fight for the heir apparent, the imperial family would not take any action against the Shun family within 10 years. This was something that anyone in the court with a brain could see. But previously Shun Miao was infatuated with Prince Ding, causing others to think that if Shan Xian were to marry his daughter to Fu Xiu-yi, the Shun family's position in court would become subtle. But afterwards it seemed that Shen Miao's interest in Fu Xiu-yi gradually faded, and the Shin family did not need to be involved in the storm of the fight for the heir apparent. So naturally they would be safe and sound. In the next 10 years, the name of the formidable great general in the Ding capital would be able to awe many people. Early in the morning, Luo Shuiyin came over to see Shen Miao. In these few days, Luo Shuiyin and Shen Xian were investigating the matters that happened in the past year in the Shen residence, but those matters were covered up very well, and were all insignificant small matters, thus nothing could be found out. But even so, Shin and wife still felt that it was strange. These days, their attitude towards old Shin Foreign and the other two households was a lot more distant. Shin Miao did not tell Shin and wife about Shin Qing losing her innocence. Thus it was even more impossible for Renwan Yun and Chin Rochio to take the initiative to say it. Thus Gue Momo's death was casually found as an excuse, saying that her hands and feet were not clean and thus she was expelled from the Shin residence. Renwan Yun initially thought that Shin Miao would tell the truth, but who knew that Shin Miao would follow her excuse? Renwan Yun was sure that Shin Miao did not complain to Shin Xian and wife because of some concerns, thus she became even more fearless. Miss, there are too few hairpins in your box. Bai Lu combed Shin Miao's hair into a long bun. Now that Shin Miao was thinner, she gradually had the style of a young female, thus it would be inappropriate to dress up like in the past. Moreover, they were entering the palace today, so it was better to dress respectfully and appropriately. But in the past, Shin Miao's jewelry were all handled by Renwan Yun, and most of them were gold and silver jewelry, and those jewelry were all spent when Shin Miao bought Yan Mei Shui Bai from San Fuban, as well as helping Mo Qing to bribe physician Chen. Now, the jewelry box was empty. Didn't Master bring back His Majesty's reward yesterday? Shuangzheng suddenly had an idea. Why not let young lady pick from those? There are definitely many good things bestowed by the palace. Forget it. Shin Miao flatly refused. Those things in the palace, which one was not stained with blood? Now she did not want to wear those things on her body at all, as if it was stained with blood. It would remind her of those tragic years. She thought for a moment, then opened a hidden compartment in the jewelry box and picked out a hairpin. Oh, this hairpin is so beautiful. Bai Lu was pleasantly surprised. When did young lady have such a hairpin? Was it given by foreign? Shin Miao picked up the hairpin and looked at it carefully. This was the real begonia that Xie Jingxing had used in the academy examinations in the plum blossom forest to exchange for the begonia that she wore on her head. If it was not for Bai Lu mentioning about no jewelry today, she would have thrown this thing to the back of her mind. The entire body of the hairpin was made of jade, from light to dark, until it reached the part of the flower. The entire piece of jade was a sparkling purplish-red color. The craftsman who carved it was also skillful. The begonia petals were in full bloom, and there was a sense of prosperity. It was cold and moist to the touch. Obviously, it was a top-quality jade material. One feared that this begonia hairpin was worth more than 1,000 gold. In the previous lifetime, Shin Miao had seen a lot of good things in the palace, so naturally she could see that this hairpin was extraordinary. Because of this, she was even more surprised with Xie Jingxing. No matter how rich the residence of the Marquis of Lin was, it would not be able to withstand such extravagance. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.